Hello again. Here we are to continue talking about React Native. In the previous video, we added a text input, and we talked about using the text input pattern, and we set that up so we can search our cat database for various animals, right? And it seems to be working. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk more about some of the built-in native components that React Native supplies and how to work with the keyboard. If you were testing on your phone, you may have run into a problem where the software keyboard covers the input field. I'm using the simulator, so it doesn't necessarily show us the software keyboard because it lets you use the the hardware keyboard, right, when you're typing. But if you have a phone, you don't have a hardware keyboard, right? The keyboard is virtual, and it's like shown on the screen, right, as a bunch of buttons, right, that you press, right, or touch on the screen, right? So like in the simulator, if you're using the simulator to show the keyboard, make the simulator active and then go to the I/O menu, and you can go to the keyboard option here and choose toggle software keyboard. And that it should show the keyboard. There it is, right? So the keyboard shows up, and you can see it's covering my input field, right? I can type with the keyboard and test it. Let's type in Bob, like, so it's all working, right? But the problem is, like, if I can't see what I'm typing, then it's not very useful to me, right? Like the input, like the user experience is poor, right? So you've probably used apps before, and when you type something into an input, like the input slides up with the keyboard, right? And you don't get that for free, actually, right? It's not like an automatic thing. The software developer has to handle that, okay? On iOS, you have to write code yourself to move the input fields out of the way of the keyboard. In React Native, they've supplied us with a component that does that, which is actually super convenient. Okay, let's take a look at it. I think I have the page open here. Yeah, I do here. Keyboard avoiding view. Let me zoom out a little bit, right? So you can see it's on, if I go to components, and I can see it on the list here, keyboard avoiding view, right? Let's zoom in a little bit, right? It's a little hard to read maybe on the video, but let's take a look at the code here, right? So what are they doing? They've got a demo app here, and you can test that app if you want. I think you can even test that on your phone, right? And they've imported two elements here. They imported the keyboard avoiding view and platform, right? And they have a couple other things here, but the rest of this is just used as some content that we can avoid, right? So, they're using this touchable input and a text input and a button to bring up the keyboard, and then the keyboard avoiding view is going to avoid the input field, right? So notice that the keyboard avoiding view, the opening tag is here and the closing tag is at the bottom. So they use the keyboard avoiding view as the parent component. So everything that needs to avoid the keyboard needs to go inside the keyboard avoiding view, okay? Second, inside the keyboard avoiding view in the opening tag, there's two attributes that they're using: behavior and style. Okay, so style is we've already seen that one, right? But behavior is new, and it's specific to the keyboard avoiding view. So the keyboard avoiding view has a couple behaviors that it uses. It can and how it avoids the keyboard. It can use the padding method or the height method. Okay, and this is dependent on platform. So they're using the platform OS to get a string that tells us what platform we're on. So if we're on the iOS platform, we're going to use padding as our avoiding method. Otherwise, we're going to use height. Okay, I'm going to copy this. We're just going to use this directly. Okay, and then one more thing. So the styles right here are important for the keyboard avoiding view. We have to make sure the keyboard avoiding view expands to fill the entire space, okay? So it matters how, and then it also matters how the keyboard avoiding view maybe arranges its children, right? So you'll notice here, if I scroll down to styles.container, you'll see that they've given their keyboard avoiding view a flex of 1, okay? So that'll cause it to expand to fill the screen, especially if it's the top level component, right? Okay, so there's nothing outside of this. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to copy this line here, and then let's go to our code and try it out. So I'm in app.js, and I'm going to go to the import statement here for my React Native components, and I'm going to add in, I guess I'm not using that scroll view anymore. Let's delete that, right? And then I'm going to add in here keyboard avoiding view, okay? And then I'll also import platform, okay? So we've got that. Now let's implement the keyboard avoiding view. In our code, we're using safe area, and I did some experimentation, and it seemed if you put the safe area inside the keyboard avoiding view, it didn't work correctly. So I'm going to leave the safe area on the outside like this, and then I'm going to put my keyboard avoiding view inside here. So let's do keyboard avoiding view, and then I'll put the closing tag down here at the bottom. Okay, so all of my content here that's going to avoid the keyboard is going to be inside the keyboard avoiding view. Okay, let's configure the keyboard avoiding view. So I'm going to, in the opening tag here, I'm going to add a few attributes, and the first one is going to be behavior. Okay, so there's our behavior, and if we test, it seems like we've lost the keyboard, or I mean the input field, right? And then notice that the width here has collapsed, right? And that's because the height of this component is now just as tall as the contents that you have here, right? And so that's pushed the input field off the bottom, okay? So we need to bring that back up. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a style. So we're going to say style, and we already have some styles below, so I'm going to say styles, and then I'm going to make a new style called keyboard avoiding view, KAV, okay? I don't want to type the whole keyboard avoiding view, it's too long. So I'm just going to give it a name, KAV, and then in my list of styles at the bottom, I'll put it at the top here of the list. I'll do KAV and put in this this property here. So property, and then my props will go in here. And then I'm going to give this a flex of 1. Okay. And let's see. I think we might need a little bit more. Oh yeah. So my input field now appears at the bottom, but it's still not. It's kind of like, it's hard to see there. Did you notice it kind of slid down? So it's showing up, but it's just not. It's kind of, I bet it's about here, right? So sometimes you need to tinker with this. So I think what I did to get this to work is I gave this a flex of 1, and then I said justify content center. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, now I can see just the top edge of the input field, right? Let's see, what else do we need here? I kind of feel like the keyboard avoiding view here is not expanding to fill the area. So let's also give it a width of, and you can use, the one unit you can use is percent. So I'm going to give that a width of 100%. And now that kind of takes up the space, and I can just barely see the top of, actually I can see it there, but if I type in here, let's type American, right? So like as I start typing that in there, if there's cats here to display, and this isn't empty, then it's pushing this input field down a little bit too far. It's kind of overlapping with the keyboard, right? So we could try a couple things. I'm betting that either if we add margin or padding on the keyboard avoiding view, maybe at the bottom, or if we give the search box a little bit of margin or padding at the bottom, maybe margin actually here, right? So let's give that a try just for fun. What if I said margin? I actually did margin on the input field, and that worked pretty good. I was just wondering if it would work here too. Let's do margin of 50, right? Oh yeah, that seemed to work pretty good, right? So I could put some margin here. Why don't I do this too? I think I'm going to give the search field a little border. So we'll say border width of 1, and then that'll make this visible, right? So now I can kind of see it, right? And so I get an idea of where it is. Let's, we click in here and hit delete, right? So we'll do bobtail, right? So that's kind of working there, right? Maybe we need a little more space here, but actually that kind of works, right? Maybe this is a little too much. Maybe the 50 pixels margin is a little too much. Maybe if I made that like 40 or something, right? 30. Yeah, maybe like that, right? Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that that's helpful. You might experiment with these. It might also depend on the size that you used for some of the other elements. You might have to adjust your styles from what I have, but essentially the formula here is we got to make sure that this takes up the space, right? And then we need to check what platform we're on, right? And then everything else will be wrapped inside the keyboard avoiding view, okay? So anyway, hopefully that's useful and helps you move your projects forward. Thanks for watching.